Your mind never stops scanning, not when you're laughing, not when you're sitting in a quiet room with nothing left to do, not even when you're with people who love you. There is always a part of you running in the background, reading, measuring, comparing this moment to every moment that came before it. And the exhausting part is not the awareness. It's that you cannot explain it to anyone without sounding like something is wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you, but something was built into you, or built by you, that the people around you simply don't have. And until you understand what it actually is, you will keep trying to fix the wrong thing. Psychology splits hyper-aware people into two groups, and which one you belong to changes everything. The first group was born this way. Researchers call them highly sensitive persons, HSPs, and the trait has a biological marker, a nervous system that processes information more deeply than average. Not more dramatically, more deeply. The same data goes in, the processing is fundamentally different. About 15 to 20% of people carry this. It exists across over 100 animal species. It is not a disorder. It is a survival strategy that evolution kept because in certain environments it is extraordinarily useful. The second group developed this awareness not from biology, but from necessity. Imagine a child growing up in a house where the emotional atmosphere could shift without warning. Not necessarily violent, just unpredictable. Where the sound of a car door closing could mean the night goes one of two very different ways. Where you learn to read your parents' face before they finished walking through the door. Where you became, without being asked, a reader of invisible signals. That child's amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, learned to stay on, not as a response to danger, as a baseline. And a baseline, once established, neurologically does not switch off when the environment changes. It follows you into every room, every relationship, every conversation where nothing is technically wrong, but something in you is already running the scan. The shield that protected you fused into your skin. And now you call it anxiety. You call it overthinking. You call it being too much. It was survival. It just never received the memo that the danger passed. Here is what it looks like from the inside. And this is the part most people misname. Your manager sends a message. 3 words. Got a minute? For most people, a meeting. For you, analysis begins before you finish reading. The phrasing, the timing, the punctuation, or lack of it. You are not being paranoid. You are running a pattern recognition system trained for years on exactly this kind of data. And here is the part nobody says out loud. You are often right. Neuroscience calls this hypervigilant pattern recognition. It is a genuinely sophisticated neural system. You notice the pause before someone compliments you. You feel the energy of a room shift before anyone speaks. You read what a person means while everyone else is still processing what they said. This is not anxiety. This is not weakness. This is a finely calibrated system, and most people spend their entire lives trying to turn off something they never understood. But the awareness doesn't stop at noticing. It recruits. Every signal gets pulled into analysis. Every analysis generates interpretations. Every interpretation demands management, even if that management is invisible. You adjust your expression. You choose your words carefully. You hold the feeling in a container no one else can see. And you do all of this while also trying to just be present. You are never fully in any room. Part of you is always slightly above it, watching. The result is exhaustion with no external cause. A full day at a desk, no dramatic events, and you come home depleted because your brain ran a marathon nobody clocked and nobody credited. Now here is where it reaches into your relationships. When you can see beneath people's surfaces, and you can, the surface stops meaning what it means to everyone else. A compliment arrives and you note the timing, the hesitation before it, the possible motive. An apology sounds incomplete because you can already see whether the person is genuinely accountable or just wants the tension to stop. Kindness feels layered. You are not cynical. You have simply seen enough backstage to know that the performance and the truth are not always the same thing. Psychology calls this high theory of mind, the ability to accurately model what other people are thinking and feeling. Research consistently shows it is a cognitive strength. People who score high on it outperform others at reading emotion, predicting behavior, navigating complex dynamics. But it costs you something that doesn't have a clean name: the ability to simply receive a moment, to take someone at their word without scanning it, is diminished, and that creates a specific loneliness, not the loneliness of being alone. The loneliness of being in a crowd where everyone else is reading a simpler version of the same book. You keep finding footnotes they don't notice. And you carry those footnotes home. Worse, because your mirror neuron system doesn't just observe other people's emotions, it absorbs them. You end up holding weight that was never yours to hold. A friend's grief sits in your chest for days. A stranger's nervous energy becomes a physical sensation in your own body. You become the emotional regulator for every room you walk into, not because you volunteered, because your system could not respond. The person who always understands everyone rarely gets understood. That asymmetry is quiet, and it is chronic. Here is what happens in the body. Pay attention here. Interoception is the brain's ability to sense the body's internal signals: heartbeat, breath, tension. People with heightened awareness score significantly higher on interoceptive sensitivity. They feel their own physical states more intensely than average, which means a cup of coffee is not just alertness. It is a heartbeat the nervous system flags as a warning. A tightening in the chest is not just stress. It is data the brain, primed for threat, misreads as danger. The alarm sounds. Cortisol releases. The cortisol creates stronger sensations. The stronger sensations confirm the alarm was right. The loop closes on itself, and you feel like something is wrong, even when nothing is. Most people in this state receive advice designed for a different system. Breathe, think positive, count your blessings. That advice isn't wrong. It was written for someone else, for a nervous system that occasionally overreacts, not for one that never fully powers down. What actually helps is different, and it requires understanding one more thing first. At some point, the awareness got recruited into a specific job: preparing for pain. If you can see a relationship deteriorating, you can begin grieving it before it ends. If you can model every possible outcome, you cannot be blindsided. If you predict disappointment precisely enough, you can meet it already standing. Psychologists call this anticipatory processing. In small doses, adaptive. But the brain, once it learns that prediction feels like protection, does not keep it in small doses. It begins running simulations on everything. Every good moment carries a shadow. Every connection gets held at the distance required to model its possible loss. You stop living in your life. You begin managing it from slightly above it. The cruelest part, it works. You don't get blindsided as often. The accuracy reinforces the pattern. What the brain doesn't account for is the compound cost, experiencing joy with one eye already on its exit. Intimacy filtered through a layer of readiness for it to disappear. You were protecting yourself. It worked, and it cost you more than you have probably ever said out loud. Sarah is 31. She works in communications. Colleagues call her extraordinarily perceptive. She reads rooms before anyone speaks, knows what people need before they ask. She sits in her car after work, engine off, parking lot empty. She is replaying a 10-second moment from a meeting that ended 40 minutes ago. Specifically, the way her manager nodded while she was speaking. Agreement or polite performance? She replays it again, drives home, makes dinner, replays it again. And the worst part? She is not even sure anything was actually wrong. She has not been in a relationship in 3 years, not for lack of wanting one, but somewhere along the way she realized she was always more aware of what the other person needed than of what she felt. She could read them with precision. Her own interior had gone quiet, crowded out by everyone else's signals. Her sister said it simply: "You're the most perceptive person I know, and you use all of it to stay safe. When are you going to use it to stay present?" Sarah didn't answer, but something in those words landed differently than anything had in years, because she had always aimed the awareness outward. The idea of directing it inward, not to analyze herself, but to actually inhabit herself, had never fully formed. She had been so busy reading the room that she forgot she was also in the room. So what actually changes this? Not the awareness. It is not going anywhere. And honestly, you would not want it to. What you are looking for is not simpler perception. You are looking for a different relationship to what you perceive. The first shift, noticing without recruiting. The noticing will always happen. You walk in, you feel the temperature. A message arrives. Something registers. That is the system. You cannot turn it off. And you don't need to. But noticing is only the first movement. What comes next? Pulling that noticing into analysis, preparation, management, that is a pattern. And patterns can change. Ask one question before the loop begins. Does this belong to me right now? The tension between two colleagues, not yours to carry. The slight edge in a friend's voice that might be about her own day, not yours to decode. The tightening in your chest after a hard conversation, real, but not a verdict. You are allowed to notice without owning. You are allowed to perceive without inheriting. The second shift, turning the awareness inward. Not to analyze yourself, you already do that, but to actually be present in your own interior. To ask what you feel, not just what you've detected. To give your own signals the same careful attention you've spent years giving to everyone else's. When that shift happens, and it is slow, it is not an insight, it is a practice. The awareness doesn't dim. It matures. The same perception that once made every room feel like a field to be carefully navigated starts to feel more like a compass, something you consult, not something that commands. You came into this carrying something you probably didn't have a precise name for. Now you do. And knowing what something is, actually knowing, is the only honest starting point. You were not built wrong. You were built for an environment that demanded this level of awareness. The adaptation was correct. The update just never arrived. You don't need less awareness. You need less responsibility for things that were never yours to carry. You were not too much. You were simply never taught what to do with the weight of seeing this clearly. When did your awareness first start feeling less like a gift and more like a responsibility you never agreed to take on? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. If this is the kind of content that reaches the part of you that doesn't usually get reached, subscribe to Mind Beneath. We go deeper every week, and we never pretend the surface is enough.